I think he'll change. He is committed of his own level of service, and that will remain.
What if I told you that Princess Anne, the hardest-working royal who never seeks the spotlight, has just shattered decades of palace silence with a revelation so explosive it could bring down the monarchy as we know it? Right now, at this very moment, Buckingham Palace is in complete lockdown mode. Emergency meetings, frantic phone calls, legal teams working overtime. Why? Because Princess Anne has done something absolutely unprecedented. She's exposed a secret agreement between two of the most controversial figures in royal history, Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew. Yes, you heard that correctly. Meghan and Andrew, together, working in coordination, and Princess Anne has the receipts. But here's what you need to ask yourself. Why would Princess Anne, the Queen's most loyal daughter, the woman who attended more royal engagements than any other family member last year, why would she risk everything to expose this? What could possibly be so dangerous, so damaging, that even Anne felt compelled to break her silence? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about the royal family. This isn't just gossip. This is a calculated conspiracy that's been hiding in plain sight for years, and the timer is already ticking. The bombshell. December 2025, a date that will be forever marked in royal history. Not for a celebration, not for a jubilee, but for the day Princess Anne finally said, "Enough is enough." The setting was deliberate. Not Buckingham Palace, not Windsor Castle, but Gatcombe Park. Anne's private residence, her sanctuary, the one place where she answers to no one. This wasn't an official royal statement. This wasn't vetted by palace communications teams. This was Anne speaking as herself. Consequences be damned. And what she revealed was nothing short of devastating. Picture this. Princess Anne standing before a modest gathering of carefully selected journalists, her face showing the strain of someone who's carried a terrible secret for far too long. Her hands, usually so steady, trembling slightly as she held her prepared notes. Her voice, typically firm and unwavering, carrying an edge that those present described as barely controlled fury. "I have remained silent," she began, "because I believed in the institution. I believed in family loyalty. I believed that some matters should be handled privately. But what I have discovered goes beyond family squabbles. It goes beyond personal grievances. This is about the integrity of the crown itself." Can you imagine the shock in that room? Princess Anne doesn't do drama. She doesn't seek attention. She shows up, does her duty, and goes home. For her to call a press conference? Alarm bells should be ringing in your head right now. But here's where it gets absolutely chilling. Anne revealed that she had discovered communications, encrypted messages, phone records, documented meetings, proving that Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew had been coordinating their actions for years. Not months, years. A secret alliance forged in the shadows, maintained through deception, and designed with one purpose: leverage against the royal family. Think about that for a moment. Meghan, who married into the family in 2018 and departed in 2020, supposedly seeking privacy and peace. Andrew, who was forced to step back from royal duties after his catastrophic BBC interview about Jeffrey Epstein. Two people who publicly have nothing in common. But according to Princess Anne, they've been working together since late 2019, sharing insider information, coordinating media strategies, and building an insurance policy against the instituto that both felt had betrayed them. Now ask yourself, why would Princess Anne risk her reputation, built on decades of steadfast service, to expose this? What could she have seen that was so dangerous she had no choice but to go nuclear? The answer, as we're about to discover, is even more disturbing than you can imagine. How it began. Let's rewind to November 2019. Do you remember Prince Andrew's Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis? If you don't, let me refresh your memory. It was a disaster of epic proportions, a train wreck in slow motion, a masterclass in how to completely destroy your own reputation in under an hour. Andrew thought he was going to clear his name regarding his association with convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein. Instead, he gave the world Pizza Express alibis, claims about not being able to sweat, and a complete inability to express regret about his friendship with a predator. Within 72 hours, Andrew was effectively exiled from royal duties. Charities dropped him. Institutions fled. Even his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, couldn't shield him from the tsunami of criticism and mockery that followed. Now, here's what nobody knew at the time. Here's what Princess Anne has now revealed. While Andrew was drowning in public humiliation, while he was isolated and desperate, someone reached out to him. Someone unexpected. Someone who saw opportunity where others saw disaster. Meghan Markle. According to Anne's evidence, Meghan made first contact through intermediaries in late November 2019, just weeks after Andrew's interview imploded. The initial messages were sympathetic, understanding. They expressed solidarity with someone who felt the palace had thrown him under the bus to protect its own image. "They'll do it to anyone," one message allegedly read. "I know exactly what you're going through." Think about the psychology here, folks. Andrew was radioactive. His own family was distancing themselves. But here comes Meghan, someone who was herself feeling increasingly alienated from the institution, offering understanding and validation. Do you see the genius of this approach? This wasn't crude manipulation. This was surgical. Precision. Meghan wasn't making demands or asking for favors. She was simply being there when no one else was. But why? What could Meghan possibly want from Andrew? The answer is simpler than you think. Information, access, insurance. You see, by late 2019, Meghan and Harry were already planning their exit from senior royal duties. The famous Megxit announcement would come in January 2020. But leaving the royal family isn't like quitting a job. You don't just hand in your notice and walk away. The institution has ways of controlling the narrative, of managing departures, of protecting itself at the expense of individuals. Meghan needed leverage. She needed insider knowledge that could protect her and Harry if the palace decided to retaliate. She needed someone who understood how the institution operated from the inside and who had their own reasons for wanting to settle scores. Enter Prince Andrew, bitter, isolated, and in possession of decades' worth of palace secrets. According to Princess Anne's evidence, the relationship between Meghan and Andrew evolved rapidly through December 2019 and into early 2020. What started as sympathetic messages became regular phone calls. The calls became strategic discussions, and those discussions eventually led to what Anne described as a formal understanding. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. This wasn't just about two disgruntled royals commiserating. According to Anne, they were actively planning, coordinating, building a network of mutual protection and shared intelligence. And in February 2020, they met face to face. The secret meeting. Remember when Prince Andrew supposedly took a private trip to Canada in early 2020? The official story was that he needed a break from the British media circus, some quiet time away from the scrutiny and pressure. That was a lie. According to Princess Anne's explosive revelation, Andrew traveled to Canada for one specific purpose: to meet with Meghan Markle at a secluded estate on Vancouver Island. Let that sink in for a moment. While the world thought Andrew was hiding in shame and Meghan was settling into her new Canadian life, they were actually having clandestine meetings, finalizing agreements, and coordinating strategies. The security around this meeting was extraordinary. Private transportation, no official records, location chosen specifically for its isolation. The few people who were aware of the meeting were bound by non-disclosure agreements and paid handsomely for their discretion. So, what was discussed during those hours together? Princess Anne claims to have pieced together the details from multiple sources: communications she discovered, witnesses she interviewed, and her own investigative work that's been going on for months without anyone's knowledge. The agreement they finalized had three core components. First, mutual protection. Both Andrew and Meghan faced intense media scrutiny and public criticism. Both felt betrayed by the institution. They agreed to defend each other publicly when opportunities arose. This meant strategic leaks to sympathetic journalists, coordinated social media campaigns, and behind-the-scenes pressure on media outlets to soften coverage. Do you remember those occasional articles defending Andrew that seemed to come out of nowhere? Those pieces suggesting he'd been unfairly treated, that the media had gone too far, that he deserved a second chance? According to Anne, many of those were facilitated by Meghan's team, using her extensive media contacts to plant favorable coverage. Second, information sharing. This is where it gets truly dangerous. Andrew possessed decades of insider knowledge about royal operations. He understood palace vulnerabilities, family secrets, institutional weaknesses. He knew where the bodies were buried, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively. Meghan, meanwhile, had her own insights into current family dynamics and access to a global media network that Andrew lacked. The exchange benefited both parties, but it also created a situation of mutually assured destruction. Each now possessed ammunition that could devastate the other if the relationship soured. Third, future coordination. Perhaps most troubling of all, they discussed scenarios in which they might need to act together, potential crises that could be exploited, moments when the palace would be particularly vulnerable. These weren't just reactive conversations, they were planning for contingencies that hadn't yet occurred, building strategies for situations they might create themselves. Now, I want you to stop and think about something crucial. Why is Princess Anne revealing all of this now? December 2025, nearly 6 years after the initial contact, nearly 5 years after the Vancouver meeting. What changed? What finally pushed Anne to break decades of discretion and loyalty to expose this conspiracy? The answer lies in recent events that Anne only hinted at during her revelation. She spoke about escalation, about the agreement evolving into something more dangerous, about plans being made that crossed a line even she couldn't ignore. She mentioned threats, though she wouldn't specify their nature. She talked about protecting her nieces, Beatrice and Eugenie, from being caught in crossfire. And most ominously, she stated that staying silent was no longer compatible with my duty to the crown. What could possibly be so serious that Princess Anne, who has weathered every royal scandal of the past 50 years with stoic silence felt compelled to go public. The evidence. Let's talk about what Princess Anne actually has. Because here's the thing about explosive allegations. Without evidence, they're just gossip. Without proof, they're just one person's word against another's. Anne knows this. She's not impulsive. She's not dramatic. She's a military-trained, duty-bound professional who understands exactly what she's risking by coming forward, which means she must have something concrete. During her revelation, Anne referenced specific pieces of evidence without revealing them completely. This is strategic. Hold back the most damaging material to maintain pressure and prevent the palace from crafting a complete denial strategy. Here's what she's confirmed exists: encrypted messages. Anne claims to have accessed communications between Andrew's devices and numbers traced back to Meghan's team. These messages allegedly contain explicit discussions of palace vulnerabilities, family tensions, and coordinated response strategies. Think about how damaging this could be if released publicly. We're not talking about speculation or hearsay. We're talking about documented proof of collusion. Phone records. Anne has obtained records showing regular, sustained contact between Andrew and Meghan's team throughout 2020, 2021, and beyond. The frequency and timing of these communications allegedly correlate with major royal events and media controversies. For example, did you notice how sometimes Andrew would make news right when Meghan and Harry were facing negative coverage? Or how occasionally pro-Andrew stories would emerge just when Meghan needed to shift the narrative away from her own controversies? According to Anne, this wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. Witness testimony. Anne has interviewed people who were aware of the Vancouver meeting and subsequent coordination. Staff members, security personnel, people who signed NDAs, but who Anne convinced to speak, either through appeals to loyalty to the crown or through other means she hasn't disclosed. Financial records. This is potentially the most explosive element. Anne suggests there are financial transactions connecting entities associated with Andrew and Meghan. Now, she was very careful not to specify what these transactions were for or how they were structured. But the implication is clear. Money changed hands as part of this arrangement. Could this mean Meghan helped fund Andrew's legal defenses or public relations efforts? Could it mean Andrew was compensated for information? We don't know yet, but Anne's mention of financial records suggests a level of formalized agreement that goes beyond casual coordination. But here's what's truly brilliant about Anne's approach. She's revealed enough to prove she's serious, but held back enough to maintain leverage. The palace can't simply deny everything because Anne has made clear she has documentation. But the palace also doesn't know exactly what she has, which makes crafting a response incredibly difficult. Do they issue a blanket denial and risk being proven wrong? Do they acknowledge some elements while disputing others? Do they stay silent and hope it blows over? Every option has risks, and Princess Anne knows it. Now, imagine you're King Charles right now. Your sister has just exposed a secret conspiracy involving your brother and your daughter-in-law. She claims to have evidence that could humiliate the family and potentially trigger legal investigations. And she's done this publicly, making it impossible to handle quietly within the family. What do you do?
Princess Anne has wrapped up paying tribute to fallen servicemen and women at a Remembrance Day service.
Privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty.
The palace in crisis. The immediate aftermath of Princess Anne's revelation can only be described as controlled chaos. Within minutes, Buckingham Palace issued a terse statement calling Anne's allegations categorically false and deeply irresponsible. But notice what they didn't do. They didn't threaten legal action. They didn't call her delusional or attention-seeking. They chose their words very, very carefully. Why? Because Princess Anne is not some easily dismissed outsider. She's not a tabloid journalist or a disgruntled former employee. She's the Princess Royal. She's served the crown with distinction for over 50 years. She's completed more royal engagements than virtually any other family member for the past decade. You can't just wave away her credibility. Behind the scenes, the response has been far more desperate. According to sources close to the palace, King Charles immediately convened emergency meetings with senior courtiers and legal advisors. The questions being asked are both practical and existential. What exactly does Anne have? Until they know the full extent of her evidence, they can't craft an adequate response. How do we contain this? With social media and 24-hour news cycles, the story is already spreading globally. Traditional palace strategies of controlled messaging aren't working. What do we do about Andrew and Meghan? Both have issued their own denials, but both denials have been carefully worded in ways that leave room for interpretation. Andrew's lawyers released a statement saying Anne's characterization is misleading and taken out of context, but notably didn't deny all contact with Meghan. That phrasing is significant. Taken out of context suggests that something happened, but that Anne's interpretation is wrong. Meghan's team has been more aggressive, calling Anne's claims complete fantasy and desperate attention-seeking. But again, notice the strategy. They're attacking Anne's credibility and motivation, rather than providing specific denials of specific allegations. When people issue non-denial denials, it usually means they're worried about being proven wrong. The legal situation is particularly complex. If Andrew did share confidential information about royal operations without authorization, did he violate any laws or agreements? Palace lawyers are undoubtedly exploring this question, but legal action against a member of the royal family, the Queen's final move. On the morning of November 23, 2025, Buckingham Palace appeared calm and unchanged, but inside its walls, a quiet moment would soon turn into a historic one. As the meaning settled in, Charles understood that his mother had left him more than a crown and a legacy. She had left him a challenge. The clause was not simply about money or property. It carried intention, expectation, and a quiet message about family, responsibility, and the atmosphere in the room shifted almost instantly. What began as an administrative routine became a moment of stunned silence. Palace officials quickly realized the weight of what had been uncovered. This was not a forgotten note. King Charles III was seated in his private office, reviewing documents linked to Queen Elizabeth II's estate. It was meant to be a routine legal review, another step in the long, careful process of settling a monarch's private affairs. Nothing about the morning suggested drama, yet hidden within the orderly paperwork was a revelation that would ripple through the royal household. As Charles turned another page, this was not just about inheritance or constitutional order. It was profoundly personal. As he read his mother's words, it became clear that Queen Elizabeth had made one final, thoughtful intervention in a family story she knew remained unresolved. Even in her final months, she had been planning, guiding, and quietly preparing for a future she knew she would not see. The Queen had always believed in thinking ahead, or a legal afterthought. The clause had been carefully written and intentionally concealed, designed to emerge only at the right time. News of the discovery spread quietly but swiftly through the palace, sending shockwaves behind closed doors. For King Charles, the impact went far beyond law and procedure. He came across a sealed and unfamiliar section of the will. It stood out immediately. This was not part of the estate plan he believed he knew so well. The clause was clear, deliberate, and deeply specific, and it centered on Prince Harry. What Charles was reading had never been shared with senior royals, advisors, or even close family members. Until that moment, its existence had remained completely unknown, unfinished bonds. It forced Charles to confront not only his role as king, but also his role as a father. Outside the palace gates, life moved on unaware. London bustled, the world turned, and headlines remained unchanged. But inside Buckingham Palace, nothing felt ordinary anymore. A secret once buried had come into the light, and with it came difficult decisions that could no longer be delayed. Throughout her reign, she was known for patience, strategy, and a deep understanding of timing. This hidden clause reflected all of that. It was not written in haste or emotion, but with care and purpose. By keeping it sealed, she ensured it would surface during Charles's reign, when he would be strong enough and tested enough to deal with its consequences. As Queen Elizabeth's voice, long silent, had spoken again, guiding, mating, and shaping the future of the monarchy from beyond the grave. King Charles has uncovered a hidden clause in his mother's will that directly involves Prince Harry. But what exactly does it say? Is it a punishment for Harry's decision to leave the UK for California, or a carefully crafted plan born of forgiveness and foresight? Now, let's uncover a clause with a condition. Prince William's shocking announcement. The day began like a typical royal morning in Kensington Palace. According to unnamed palace sources, it was precisely 7:48 in the morning. The palace released a statement through its official channels. Within seconds, aides inside the palace knew this was not routine. The statement did not come from an office, a spokesperson, or a committee. It came directly from Prince William himself. That detail alone changed everything. Unlike typical palace announcements, there was no formality. In a move that caught palace observers off guard, Prince William announced the complete and permanent end to any future relationship between the Crown and the Duchess of Sussex, which meant it hit breakfast television in Britain, afternoon newsrooms in Asia, and late-night desks in North America all at once. That timing ensured there was no quiet window, no soft rollout. Within 3 minutes, the BBC reported the news. Sky News followed. ITV cut into morning shows. In the United States, CNN pushed an alert banner across its screen. By 8 o'clock, the story had replaced financial updates, weather segments, and entertainment news across major networks. Now, this is a shocker. People all over the globe already sensed that the Crown and the Sussexes weren't on good terms through interviews, documentaries, court filings, and media commentary. Those episodes were messy, emotional, and often reactive. This announcement was neither emotional nor reactive. It was administrative in tone but personal in origin. That combination unsettled everybody. Although analysts believe that the financial markets did not move dramatically after the announcement, there were some disruptions. the pound remained stable, though shares tied to British media companies saw brief spikes in trading volume as people raced to view the announcement. Public reaction across the world was not the same, though. In the United Kingdom, YouGov Snap polling later that day showed a sharp divide by age. As the news spread, embassies reached out to the palace for clarifications. According to a source, Commonwealth Governors-General received briefings from William's office, and by midday, palace switchboards had logged thousands of calls. And guess what? Yeah, most went unanswered, not due to overload, but by design. Silence became part of the message. The institution had spoken, and the decision is not up for debate. By early afternoon, the story had shifted from what happened to what comes next. Commentators began asking how this would affect future coronation planning, charitable patronages, and media strategy. Veteran reporters like Nicholas Witchell, who has covered the monarchy for decades, described the moment as something he had never seen in his career. International media moved fast. Reuters distributed a breaking bulletin within 4 minutes. In France, Le Monde updated its homepage headline before most commuters reached work. But the press reaction is nothing compared to social media. Data from CrowdTangle showed over 1 million interactions across platforms within the first 10 minutes. On X, the topic reached #1 worldwide in under 8 minutes. Outside Kensington Palace, journalists were already in position. Some had been there since dawn, tipped off that something significant was coming, though none expected this scale. A palace staffer even described it as a rupture of historic proportions, not just within a family, but within British society as a whole. William also ordered the palace to activate a response. Plans like this take a long time to make. Interestingly, a former palace staff even confirmed that such scenarios are usually years in the making. However, what made this moment stand out was not even the noise, but certainty. That vacuum meant commentators could only analyze structure, precedent, and consequence, not personalities. But according to royal historians, William's decision is nothing new or surprising. For instance, the palace removed Her Royal Highness from Diana's name following her famous divorce from Charles back in 1996. But others were quick to counter that even then, communication was handled through government channels rather than personal declaration. No one could recall a moment when a future king personally authored such a declaration. Older citizens largely viewed the decision as overdue and necessary for the stability of the institution. But the younger folks were not particularly happy with the finality of William's decision. Aside from that, William's decision not to give a direct speech also mattered. There were no emotional appeals, no personal grievances aired, no reference to past interviews or allegations. By avoiding that, there was no immediate counter to William's announcement. Media outlets had facts to report, but little to dissect. There was no room left for reinterpretation, no space for reconciliation stories, and no language that suggested a chance for review. It closed a door that many believed would never fully shut, but it wasn't just about the message. It was the timing that really mattered. Keep watching, because we are about to reveal everything you need to know about William's shocking decision. The timing of the release matters a lot. It was 7:48 in the morning. Legal analysts discussed the implications for titles, funding, and representation, careful not to speculate beyond what the statement allowed. The line had been drawn, but its shadow stretched forward. As the day moved on, people's attentions slowly began to drift toward the reason behind William's action. People wanted to understand how such a decision was prepared, who was consulted, and how long it had been coming. Stick around, because you are about to find out what triggered William. Whether you sympathize with Meghan or with Andrew or with neither, Princess Anne's revelation demands a reckoning. The royal family cannot continue as it has. Something must change. Either meaningful reforms that create real accountability and transparency, or a continued erosion of public support that eventually makes the institution unsustainable. Princess Anne, the woman who never sought the spotlight, who dedicated her life to quiet service, has forced this moment of truth. And the monarchy will never be the same. The question now isn't whether this scandal will be forgotten. It's whether the institution can survive what comes next. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for more in-depth coverage of this developing story. Because I promise you, this isn't over. This is just beginning.